This is Classical Ideas with Greg Soden. Welcome to Classical Ideas. This is Greg Soden. Over the course of several years, my guest today, Yujiro Seki, single-handedly planned, shot, and edited a feature-length documentary called Carving the Divine. Carving the Divine offers a rare and intimate look into the life and artistic process of modern-day Būshi practitioners of a 1,400-year-old lineage of woodcarving that is at the beating heart of Japanese Mahayana Buddhism. Yujiro had the rare opportunity to follow a guild of Buddhist sculptors from the studio of Bushi, Master Seki, a former apprentice of the legendary Bushi Master Sato. Master Seki is a pioneer in preserving and advancing the art of Bushi. He's not only taken many apprentices under his wing, he's also established a school for the Japanese public to learn the craft. Yujiro was granted rare access into the life and rites of Buddhist priests, and especially those of Shingon, or True Word Buddhism. Our conversation today discusses Yujiro's motivations for making the film Carving the Divine, his history of being exposed to Bushi while growing up in Japan, the process of making his film Carving the Divine, and other discussions around Shingon Buddhism. After you listen to this episode, or actually, you should just pause it right now and do this, you should watch his trailers for his film and subscribe to his YouTube channel, where he is posting teasers and footage from his film about the 1,400-year-old tradition of Būshi, while also doing other Q&A discussions about Buddhism and Buddhist practice in Japan. You should check out carvingthedivine.com to check out and support Yujiro's work. This was a fantastic conversation about filmmaking and making documentary work. So without further delay, here is my conversation with documentarian and filmmaker Yujiro Seki. Yujiro, thank you so much for coming on Classical Ideas.
Thank you very much for having me, Greg.
So I'm curious if we can just go ahead and start by having you introduce yourself a little bit to the audience, like where you grew up, and how you got interested in filmmaking.
Well, as I was growing up in Japan, I was just going to high school, and I was involved in theater, and I made movies with my friends, and I fell in love with the process. And I thought I want to do this for the rest of my life. That was a big mistake, by the way. But I thought to myself like that. So at that time I was in high school. So if I want to study cinema, I should go to the United States. So that's why I came to the United States.
What kind of movies were you and your friends making in high school?
It was a detective movie. It's a comedy detective movie that, basically, kids love to do something like that, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up in Japan?
It's called Maebashi City in Japan, which is close to Tokyo, a couple hours away from Tokyo by driving.
Excellent. So the reason I wanted to talk to you today for this show is because, as you know, this is a podcast about religion, and I found you because you are making a film about Buddhists who do a very particular form of carving. But before we dive into that, I'm curious, what are some of your personal interests in religion in general?
Well, I call myself, I guess, a seeker of the truth. So I am a very philosophical person. So it does not mean I only am interested in Buddhism. I think every wisdom tradition is very intriguing. as well as a philosophical tradition, so like including religion. So my passion is to actually learn about the different religions, different philosophies, and apply into in my life, so that I can have a life with wisdom rather than being fooled by my desire or foolishness. So, of course, the Buddhism is one of the religions that is filled with wisdom. But at the same time, I'm open to any religions or philosophy that can teach me something. So that's who I am.
Excellent. That's really very, very much aligned with what I think about the world as well. As I mentioned to you earlier, I'm a high school teacher, and I teach classes about religion, and every year my students will read things like the Bhagavad Gita, all the way through the Quran, through the Gospels, and the Torah, and the Dhammapada, and every single time when I'm reading them, we talk about how these things are aligned with their lives. And I think that they take away a lot from all the different traditions and all the different texts. So everything you just said, I feel like is kind of like the entire purpose of my class. So I just agree with everything you just said. So do you consider yourself a practicing Buddhist, or are you more just kind of like aligned with reading and studying as far and wide as you can?
Yeah, I'm not Buddhist, but I grew up in a certain environment which is more in alignment with the Buddhist thought than other religious thought. So, of course, my life was influenced by Buddhism, but at the same time, again, I'm open to anything.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk a little bit about your film today, Carving the Divine. But before we dive into your film, I'd like to give you a moment to kind of set the stage. And I think that it's important that we discuss some general Buddhist terms of importance that will help people to understand the context of your film, which was filmed within a mainly Shingon Buddhist context in Japan. So can you kind of talk a little bit about what is Shingon Buddhism and what are some of the main concepts people need in order to understand your film?
Whew, that's a very heavy question because,
yes, sir. Sorry about
that. Because, when you talk about the particular sect of Buddhism, it is very important to understand the basic of Buddhism. So what I mean by basic is there are three types of three schools of Buddhism that people need to understand even before getting into any sect of Buddhism. One is Theravada Buddhism. Another one is Mahayana Buddhism, and the last one is Vajrayana Buddhism. So basically, Theravada Buddhism is about believing enlightenment. Enlightenment is about your own effort. So nobody can help to gain the enlightenment for you. Enlightenment Buddhist means basically you're gonna be basically free from an endless cycle of rebirth, and you basically extinguish your ego and desire, so you can finally be free. So, and you don't need to be born again. That's the idea behind the enlightenment. But in order to achieve that in Theravada Buddhism, you got to do it for yourself. Nobody can help you. That's the idea. So in order to do that, you got to renounce the life you have. You got to go to a monastic order. And you gotta devote your life only to study and meditate and to achieve the enlightenment. That's a tough thing to do because you gotta say goodbye to your wife, you gotta your friends and your job, and just to say screw that. I'm gonna pursue path of Buddha. So, which is a very difficult thing to do. So the second one is Mahayana. Mahayana Buddhism is Buddhism for lay people. So even though you are not monks or you don't renounce your life, you still can achieve the enlightenment. That's the idea behind the Mahayana. So Mahayana became very popular among the lay people in East Asia because it's attractive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't need to do extreme thing, in order to achieve the enlightenment. So that's the Mahayana. So Virgin Honor is extension of a Mahayana, which is also known as esoteric Buddhism. So esoteric Buddhism basically means there are a lot of secrets that they don't reveal to you. And mainly esoteric Buddhism is for Tibetan Buddhism and also Shingon Buddhism in Japan. That's where Shingon comes from.
And Shingon, the word Shingon translates roughly to mantra, right?
It's called Mahayana Buddhism, but the Shingon means a true word in Japanese.
Okay.
So in Shingon practice, basically words themselves are not enough to achieve the enlightenment. You got to do something else.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So let's dive into your film a little bit here. So you have a new film coming out called Carving the Divine. Mm-hmm. And so what is the premise for the film? What is the film about?
Well, Carving the Divine is about the Buddhist sculptors of Japan. And this tradition has 1,400 years in Japan. And it's a very integral to Japanese people's life in 21st century without even people realizing it. So basically, this documentary showcases modern day Bushi, which is a practitioners of this 1,400 years of tradition. So how exciting is it?
So what is Būshi? The sculptures, they're called Būshi, right?
Right.
So what is Būshi and why is it important?
Well, again, in the 21st century, what is more important than 1,400 years of tradition? That's the first question, right?
Sure.
Yeah, but this refined form of art basically came from China and through Korea, which is about the 6th century. And from there, they made a development. First, it was just only imitation of a Chinese Korean style. But about year 1000, so because Japan broke away from China, it went isolationism. So Japan started developing its own style, and the Japanese are very perfectionism. So when you see those statues, you will be amazed because they don't even use a sandpaper, and it's just when you go museums everywhere, not only Japan, around the world, you see those sculptures everywhere because art historians and art creators find the values in them, but they don't know anything about who made them, most of them.
Sure.
Not everybody. So even people who go to museums, they don't know what they are and the people who make them. So I thought, why not make a documentary about this culture or tradition that people have never seen before. Even in Japan, it's very difficult to get into the life of Bushi.
So are they just carving statues of Shakyamuni Buddha?
No. There are a lot of statues, different kind of statues in Japan. That's where Shingon comes from. So the Shingon has a lot of has a pantheon of Buddhist deities, whereas other religions as Shin Buddhism, Jodo Shinshu, they only celebrate only one deity.
Okay, cool. So how did you first come to discover Bushi carvers? Like, how old were you?
Well, this is an interesting question because I knew Bushi ever since that I was little. Not too little, but as far as I remember, I was grow up in this kind of tradition. What I mean by that is my father was a Buddhist furniture maker, and he was surrounded by Buddhist priests because they are his customers, and also Bushi as well. So I had opportunity to meet Bushis, and when I was a little, I didn't think anything of it. It was just a part of my life.
Mm-hmm. So what was the moment that Bushi jumped out at you and you realized, wow, this is so historically important?
Well, that's because I came to the United States, because I was be able to see Japan from outside of view. If I was in Japan and only lived in Japan as a Japanese, I would have probably never noticed the value of it.
That's so interesting. And I'm right now I'm reading a book called Zen Odyssey by an author named Janica Anderson. But the book is a history of the first Rinzai Zen master to come to America in 1905, and his name is Sokion Sasaki, and he was apparently an unbelievable carver himself. And so I'm reading these stories about him being a furniture maker and a carver in New York City in like the 19-teens, the 1920s. And I've been thinking about your movie as well, because like this is something that is really ingrained in the culture, it seems like.
Well, ingrained in a sense, what sense is it?
Like in it just seems like there's a really important like carpentry or building or this carving and the sculptures. It seems like it's just a recurrent thing that I'd keep discovering whenever I'm looking into different aspects of Buddhism.
Well, definitely it has a long history, and whether you are a big fan of it or not, if you are Japanese, you cannot avoid being surrounded by this type of art.
Cool. So, are the carved finished statues, when they're done, are they used for like ceremonial purposes?
Well, it all depends, right? Sometimes a regular household, people order sculptures in their house. Like, I told you my father is a Buddhist altar maker. And this altar is like an ancestral altar. So you put the piece of wood representing the grandfather or like your deceased like a father or mother, and you pray for it like every morning, every night or something. People do that, but often people put like a statue inside of the altar, patron to deity, so that deity can protect the family and all this. That's like one purpose, right? And the other purpose is of course like temples, especially Shingon temples. They order statues, and statue itself is just an empty shell. But priests basically put the soul into statue and give a statue meaning. So, also other sect of Buddhism order it, and maybe they don't believe in spirit, but still order it in order to have a statue in their temple. So, there are multiple ways to these statues.
When did you start working on carving the divine?
Was almost 6 years ago, actually.
So like around 2012?
Yes, and it was about April, so it's coming up, I think.
Excellent. So when you got really into the film and the creation process, so obviously were you living in the United States whenever you got the idea to make the film?
Well, I went back to Japan to make a film, of course.
Okay,
because it was set in Japan.
Sure. So what was your life like while you were making this film? Like, what was your day-to-day routine?
Well, here's the thing. So it does not mean I'm filming it all the time. I mean, I have other obligations like work.
Yeah.
I guess I had to work. So, but at the same time, it was a very mundane, to be honest with you. It's not like most of the time it's not really exciting. It's just the tedious work of filming because most of the time people just make carvings.
Sure.
And after a while, I mean, you get a little bit tired of what you're doing because it is very difficult to make a story out of something like this when people are just carving. And sometimes the story comes out and I have to capture the moment. So it was very tedious. It took me a lot of patience.
So how did you gain access to the craftsmen and the carvers that you featured in the film? Like, how did you go about contacting them and getting them to agree to let you film them?
Well, to be honest with you, this is a cheat sheet that I have. This means basically I have a family connection.
Okay.
This was the only reason why I was be able to have that access. That's one of the reasons also I started the film, because this is the way that I can make a contribution to the world. If I try to do something else, which, I might not have this great access.
Mm-hmm.
And, what honor it is to make something like this, if I have access. So it didn't like take me so much to think about if I do it or not, because it was there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So who are the priests in the film? Are they full-time monastics or are they lay people? Who are they?
Well, mainly I had opportunity to film Shingon priest, but I also went different sect of Buddhism as well. But as far as Shingon Buddhism goes, people, those Shingon priests, once they are finished with their training, most of them they live in temples, and they are guardian at that temple, and they do work as a priest, but it's not really super strict as a monastic order. So they get married, of course, and I don't know if a Shingon priest will eat meat or not, but I bet some priests do eat meat. So when you think about the Mahayana tradition, it's a lot less strict than, let's say, Theravada. Theravada is very strict, but Mahayana is also for regular people. I say it's a Mahayana, even though the Shingon is considered Vajrayana, because Vajrayana is an extension of Mahayana. So they go, there's like Mahayana and Vajrayana concept, go back to back. So that's why I'm saying that. So
sure. So, how much of a production team did you have for making the film? Were you a one-man team, or did you have other people working with you?
Well, yes, I am a one-man team, and whenever I did shooting, either I did everything by myself, or I asked somebody who's around me to help me out.
Excellent. So what kind of advice would you give to people that are interested in making documentaries? Like, what are some of your hardest learned lessons or things that you think that other people should know when making films like this?
Well, first of all, don't do it. Run away. That's like a first suggestion, because it takes years of dedication. So I say documentary is easy to get into and difficult to get out, because it's really easy to get in because you think, oh, I have this greatest idea and I want to do a film. And I'm sure I can inspire people around the world. But once you start doing it, you realize, things don't work out as you expect to work out. And after a while, you get very frustrated. And, the only way you can get through is your passion and persistence. And this is going to go into the answer to your question. First, you got to have a passion to your subject. If you don't have the passion, you will not going to make it. I guarantee. Mm-hmm. But second thing is to do things you have access to. So if you make a film and if you don't have any a financial backing from big people, you gotta work with what you have. And often when you look around, there's something unique about you or unique about the way you grow up. And, there's something you can only offer. So you got to dive into that subject rather than thinking about, oh, I think this subject is cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned persistence and access, and you mentioned that you had these things with regards to the priests and the carvers that you were filming. Were any of the film subjects hesitant at all to let you make the film or to be involved?
Oh, yeah, of course. And I got to use, in Buddhism, we say skillful mean. I don't know if you have heard of it or not. So skillful means basically, you basically say things in a way like guide him to do the film. In my case, eventually they're convinced that they want to be in the part of the film. But some of them people in the beginning are like, I don't know about that, but again, it comes with the persistence.
Yeah. Are you still in touch with any of the priests that are in the film?
Well, not so much. I mean, I'm getting so involved with the making film. And every once in a while, so I, send a message saying that, I'm still working on it, but, I really want to finish I already finished the product, but, be able to, I want to show the film, be able to show the film around the world. And when that happens, finally, I want to show the film to those people who help me out.
Are any of them really excited about the film? Are they all really excited to see what you've been able to create?
Well, you know what? I'm not sure. I never asked them about it.
Nice. They'll see it. Hopefully they'll see it eventually. So what are some of the plans for the film? I know that you're getting ready. I know that you've got a whole bunch of great videos up on your YouTube channel. You've got a bunch of trailers out that you've been promoting. So what are your plans for release?
Well, I would like to release the film as soon as possible, but unfortunately, that's how things work in this world, I guess. Because what happens is I'm planning to submit one of the most prestigious film festivals first. So, if those festivals don't accept my film, then I'm going to go to I don't want to say lesser film festivals, but, less reputable film festivals. Mm-hmm. And those big festivals, most of them require world premiere. So if that means if I show my film to anywhere else publicly, they will deny my application and entry. So what I have to do is right now is to patiently submit my films to bigger festivals, and hopefully I'll get the world premiere there. If not, then I'm gonna find out another way to do it, which is a very tedious process.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, these film festivals only happen one time a year. So if you get accepted to one and it's 8 to 10 months away and they want to be the world premiere, well, then you have 8 to 10 months where you can't show it.
Yeah, it depends on the festival. So, some festivals just to show the film right away, and some festivals we got to wait. So it's case by case again. So that's why, it requires a lot of research.
Whenever you first popped up on my Twitter feed a few months back, I was so captivated by the trailers that you have released. So I think that everybody should go and check them out. I think that the art form that you've been talking about, Bushi carving, is so beautiful, and the craftsmanship and the work that goes into this is astounding. I'm really looking forward to seeing the film myself, because I feel like there's so much patience and dedication and skill that goes into it, and I'm just really just really excited for you and being able to finally put this film out. So where can people find you if they want to know more about your work? I know you have a really fantastic social media presence.
That's funny. Yeah. I hope so. But anyway, first of all, I think YouTube is very important, because over there I have a weekly TV show called Carving the Divine TV. Carving the Divine TV will talk about the basic concept of Buddhism and the history of the Buddhism to the people who are not exposed to this tradition. Because what I realized that is, if you're not in a certain kind of a religious community, it is very difficult to even get into understanding what core belief system and what kind of things they do and everything. So, in order for people to appreciate my film even more, I thought, it is important to inform people the basic of Buddhism. So I invite every week a scholar, Michael Jordan Van Herzenveld from LACMA, Los Angeles County Museum, to talk about Buddhism and the history of the Buddhism. And it's like a 5 to 10 minutes, and it's not heavy. And anybody who has a common sense can understand this beautiful wisdom tradition of the East. So that's first thing. So, and I have Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and each gives you a little bit of information about the movie. Sometimes I show like a little clip and a meme, like a quote from a Būshi, an apprentice. So if you guys can check them out, will be very interesting.
Well, Yujiro, this has been a really good time. I am so grateful to you for spending this evening with me to have this conversation, and I'm so excited for Carving the Divine and learning more from you whenever I get to see your film. So thank you so much for coming on Classical Ideas.
Thank you very much for having me, Greg.
Classical Ideas is produced by me, Greg Soden. Music on Classical Ideas is performed and composed by Derek Striving. You can find his music at www.wearewarmmusic.com. If you would like to support this show, please subscribe or leaving a rating in iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.